Hello and welcome to our last video on starting socks for our sock knit along. We had the Rose City rollers and we had Mina's vanilla sock recipe, and this is for starting Hermione's everyday sock. It is super popular free pattern on Ravelry and it's cuffed down. There's a little bit of texture on it. We're just gonna go over how to get started on two circulars. What I have is kind of long if you want to do one at a time. I've got a 24 and a 32-inch circular because I like when I'm doing two circular needles to have them be different lengths so I can tell them apart and know which one's needle one and which one's needle two. You also can have two of the same length, but some people don't want to have multiples of the same length of needle, same size. So I would recommend maybe a 24 and a 16. This is what we had in stock at the shop at the time. So I have one that is shorter than the other. We're going to go over how to start these socks. So let's get to it. So we've got our two circulars here and the yarn that I'm using. The inside of this is still connected to a sock I haven't finished yet. So I'm pulling from the outside. And I'm going to recommend that you cast all of your stitches onto one needle and then distribute them onto two. So this is a classic 64 stitch sock. One of the ways you can do, I like to do long tail. Sometimes I like to do German twisted. It doesn't say how to cast on in this pattern. And again, this is not meant to replace the pattern. After this video, I'm probably going to go to the heel flap, which is different than a classic one. It's a really awesome garter stitch edged Eye of Partridge heel. I love it. It's one of my favorites. But get the pattern to figure out what to do with this sock. And if you want to change the size of it with different stitches, that's something you get to take on too. So if you want a rough estimation of what you need to cast on all of these stitches, try doing about 10 stitches. 10 wraps of your needle will tell you about how much you need of your tail for 10 stitches. Then we can do 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and I like to go to 70. You can put a slip knot here or live dangerously like I do and just drape it over. Imagine, pinch it like there's a slip knot, then you're going to grab your two strands, pull them apart. I actually don't really know if I did a German twisted or not, but long tail is under, around, and through, under the front strand on your thumb, around and over the front strand on your finger, and through. German twisted, I probably did German twisted. So if we're going to go back to the beginning to do that, German twisted, you go under everything on your thumb. See that? Come back and catch the back strand and pull up, duck back up, go over. This part's just exactly the same as long tail. And then I find if you bend your thumb, you can just duck under and up and it works. So under everything, catch the back strand and duck it under, over, wibble back out. However you would like to cast on your 64, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. I will say when casting on a cuff, you want to try to keep it loose. So try not to pull really tight when you're doing this cast on. Because your cuff might end up being way too tight. That is one of the dangers of cuff down, is your cuff ends up being too tight at the top. A solution to that, other than trying to do a stretchy cast on, is cast on with a needle that is bigger. That will make it looser. Let's see if I was any good at counting as I went. Probably not. I have 61. I need 63. Actually, I need 64. I don't know where 60. I need 3 more stitches. That's where my brain was going on that. Okay. So I've got a long tail here. First thing I'm going to do is tie up my tail so I don't accidentally knit with it and get 2 rows in, and then there's sadness and I have to pull it all out again. Okay. I have everything on one long needle. I'm going to take half the stitches, redistribute them onto a second needle. I like doing this from the end, the butt end that the yarn's not attached to. So here's my other needle, my really long one, and I'm just going to slip them purlwise. Stick your needle in like you're going to purl. If you stick it in like you're going to knit, you're going to twist your stitches. So I'm going to slide, just slip. Try not to split my yarn, but I'm going to slip 32 of these onto my second needle. I believe that's 32. Anytime I'm not working with these, I'm going to slide it into the middle of my circular needle so it's a stitch holder it's not going to fall off of. I'm going to double check that I have 32 on this one. I do. All right. So if I put these down, this is small circumference knitting. If I move this to the center and I put these down, I have half and half. It doesn't look much like a circle yet, does it? We want to join for knitting in the round and we don't want them to twist. So the first thing is I'm going to try to make, it may look like a wishbone rather than a horseshoe, but that's what I like to do, is make something that's somewhat horseshoe shaped. I'm going to get some slack off of my ball here so I can lay this out the way I want to. It's eking off camera as we speak. We want to make sure it's not twisted around the needle. The yarn that we're going to knit with should be kind of off the back, like up over the top. It would be twisted if instead of having the cast on edge smooth like this, it was wrapped around, and sometimes between the needles we have to be a little careful. So to join to work in the round, we need to knit into the butt end over here with the yarn that's over here to join it into a circle. So this butt end needs to be up on a needle tip. So I'm going to slide this. Sometimes keeping it on the table helps it from getting too twisted and tangled. I'm going to slide it so it is at least close to this needle tip. It may not totally be on it. Here's the crazy thing about knitting with 2 circulars. So if I get this up on the needle and try not to let that get wibble wobbly, your other needle is just going to be a stitch holder. You always want to find the other end of the same needle. So here's the needle in my left hand. I'm going to grab the end of it and pull until I find the other end of the same needle. That's what I'm going to knit with first. And we just want to try not to tangle this yarn around the back needle. So I'm trying to get it free. I'm going to come from underneath so it doesn't twist around my needle. I like putting my needle in to knit my first stitch. And then I'm going to grab this yarn and pull it up and over, which is going to pull the back needle. This is the weirdest part usually of knitting in the round, right there. Getting this attached and up. Now we want to do ribbing. We're going to do knit 1, purl 1, ribbing. I just knit a stitch, So I'm going to knit one and purl one all the way across, and I'll meet you at the other end of this needle. Take your time when you're working with teeny tiny needles. Anytime that I am probably going to edit this and skip to the end, you may just want to pause and pick back up again when you get there. Take your time. And with an even number of stitches on the needles, you should end with a purl if you're doing knit one, purl one, ribbing. I'm at the end now. I'm going to put my yarn. I was purling, but I'm going to put my yarn to the back and in the middle there, kind of. When you're knitting with two circulars, the first thing I do when I finish a needle is I move the yarn to the middle of that needle. Then I pivot to bring the other side up to the front. And this side, again, trying not to twist it, this other needle, I'm going to get the tip that's closest to the yarn, but not the needle the yarn is attached to right now. The tip of the other needle needs to come up. And if things feel weird at the other end here, let's try not to worry about that yet. The side that's closest to the yarn goes in to the stitches. Grab the other end of the same needle and bring it around. Come under this. If you just start knitting from on top and pull it over, it's going to give you an extra stitch. So come under this so it's not wrapped around your needle. I'm going to come in to knit. And this first stitch, I'm going to pull a little bit so that the cable of the back needle gets sucked up against it. But then I'm going to continue to do my knit one, purl one, ribbing to finish this row. And I'll see you at the other end of this row. Now, same thing at the end here. We have the right number of stitches. Should end with a purl one. Ooh, and my needle just fell out, so I'm going to carefully put it back in and do my purl. And snug that up. Now, don't worry if there's a strand kind of loose here. That tends to happen if you don't do anything fun to make sure your ends come together magically, and I don't really like to do that. So again, I moved my yarn into the middle of my needle on the cord. I'm going to turn it around so that the other side is facing me, the other needle. I'm going to take the yarn is attached to this back needle, so the front one now. I'm going to put the tip in on the side that is closest to that needle. I'm going to find the other end of the same circular needle. The back needle is just a stitch holder right now. I'm going to make sure the yarn is up. Going to knit that first stitch and pull it so that cable is snug. And I'm going to keep knitting. Now, as you knit across this, your tail is on this side. That's one way to know that's the beginning of the round, and this side is not the beginning of the round. You have to knit 2 needles before you finish a round. You can also put a progress keeper or a stitch marker or something right there so that you can tell. But right now, you're going to do as many rows of ribbing as the pattern says. And then you're going to start knitting your cuff in texture pattern. And I'll meet you in our next video when we're going to be doing the heel flap. We may end up doing a tip on how to keep track of the texture pattern. Really need you to get the pattern though. It's much better to do this with the pattern, the entire pattern. My rule of thumb, when you take a break, if you can, try to take a break when you finished a needle and move your work to the middle of the needles. So thanks for joining us for the start of Hermione's Everyday Sock on 2 circulars. Got 4 needle tips there. By the time this video is published, the beginning of all 3 of our sock knit along videos should be published. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. At least give this a thumbs up or a comment to help with the algorithms to promote this channel to other people. Share this video if you liked it and think it would help others. If you'd like to support us monetarily, because that other stuff helps the channel, but if you'd like to support us monetarily, you can join this channel, which as a member, which is different than subscribing. You can give us a super thanks, which is kind of like a tip. You can also join over on patreon.com/sundragon. Those monthly subscriptions over there will get you some swag eventually from Sundragon. You can watch how things are going on the Sundragon Sideshow, although I'm the only one who's knitting socks right now. Liz is making ranunculi, my assistant, out of sock yarn, but she's not the biggest fan of socks, and that's okay. So let us know what you think. Put in the comments if you want to see videos about something else. If we can, we'll make videos. I can't promise though. We got a lot going on right now, but I always like to help if I can. And as always, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.